Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me as I set off on my journey to survive prostate cancer. Well, I've just been in Emsworth GP surgery, you can see that behind me, having my second hormone injection. Now this is a vital part of my treatment, and I'll go into more details later on. I'll also be talking about the results of my biopsy, and what that means and what the possible alternatives for treatment are. Secondly, I'll look at the ways we were trying to find out if the cancer had spread through my body. And lastly, looking at all of that, we'll look at the treatment recommended by the urology and oncology teams at QA Hospital in Portsmouth. So let's go home and I'll talk about these in my video. Well, I'm back now at home in the warm, and I'm going to continue with the story. And as promised, the first part is going to be my results. Now, I'd had my biopsy and I was given at the time an appointment to see the consultant 2 weeks later. Anyway, just 5 days after the biopsy, I was sitting in the garden contemplating some gardening when my wife came out with the phone to say the hospital was on wanting to speak to me. And the reason was they decided to give me the results early, mainly because it wasn't particularly good news. In fact, they told me the biopsy showed it was an aggressive tumour and had a Gleason score of 9. Now, I didn't know what a Gleason score is, but I soon found out. Before I go into the explanation, just to mention again that I'm not a medical person and everything I'm going to tell you I've been picking up from the team at the hospital. But essentially the Gleason scale is derived from samples taken in the prostate. If you remember, I told you during my biopsy, they took about 20 samples from across the prostate and the surrounding area. They divide them in two for the left side and the right side of the prostate, and they get an average for both and add those together. So the individual samples are scored from 1 to 5, depending on the aggression. These are combined together to give the Gleason score. Now, a Gleason score of 6 or less is said to be a low risk. A score of 7 or 8 is an intermediate risk, but a score of 9 or 10 is a high risk that the tumour is going to spread out of the prostate into the rest of the body. Now, if you remember, during my biopsy, they found that there was perineural invasion, which means there's a very high chance that the tumour will have gone out of the prostate into the rest of the body. So the team in urology decided to give me a couple more tests, a CT scan and a whole body bone scan. So on the 8th of July, I went to QA Hospital to have my 2 scans. Now, I was really lucky because I'd had a phone call almost straight away after the results of my biopsy were given to me. I was obviously being fast-tracked and arranged for the CT scan. And then the next day, I had a phone call from another team who were going to do the bone scan. And I managed to get them both on the same day. Because they knew about the CT scan, they timed that just right. So I went in first thing in the morning to have the CT scan. And that was actually in a portable unit just outside the hospital building. Then I was injected straight away with the radioactive material needed for the bone scan. Now this takes a couple of hours to go through the body, so I was given some time off. So I walked around the grounds, got to know the place pretty well, and I assume over the next few months I'll get to know it even better. And then the duly allotted time, I went in for the bone scan. So managed to get both of those done within just 5 days of the results of my biopsy. So following my CT and bone scans at QA Hospital, I was scheduled with a further consultation with the urology team at QA Hospital in Portsmouth, where they gave me the results. Now, just to set that stage for that, they divide the progress into 4 stages: stage 1, stage 2, 3 and 4. And they decided I came between stage 2 and 3. So I had locally advanced prostate cancer. And for this, they decided the 3 treatments I would have are, first of all, surgery, secondly, hormone injections, and thirdly, high beam radiotherapy. Now, because of the aggressiveness of the cancer, it was decided that I would have the hormone injection first. And this is really useful because I believe it can stop the progress of the tumour, and it can actually shrink the size of it in some circumstances. So I went straight ahead to book this, and this luckily was at my local GP surgery, so I didn't have to go into hospital beforehand. Before I could have the first injection, though, I had to start taking some tablets which were used to prevent any flare-up caused by the hormone injections. So you take these tablets for 2 weeks, then have the first hormone injection, and then carry on with the tablets for 2 weeks afterwards. Now, depending on what happens, normally you would carry on with the hormone injections every 3 months for 3 years. If after that they thought the tumour was coming back following PSA tests, I would go back on the hormone injections. And I could have those for the rest of my life. And in fact, I know 1 or 2 people in Emsworth who've been on them for over 10 years now. So I'll talk about those and some of the side effects of the hormone injections in a future episode. I think we've done enough today, so I'm going to sign off and I'll be back with you in a week's time.